Welcome to Open Book. My name is Allie Holst, and next to me are two of our favorite authors from the Grand Haven area, as well as my co-worker Amy Wilson. And although we would love to have you join us at the Morning Star restaurant, this morning we're going to be here at MCC TV to share some time with our favorite authors. As I said, on my left is Margaret Willey and Amy Young, and my co-worker Amy Wilson.
Margaret, since I know a little bit more about Amy's career and how she started, could you talk a little bit about how you got started?
Well, I have to say that I've been writing since I was a child. And also, my love affair with books started in childhood. I grew up in a very large family and read to my younger brothers and sisters. And so I feel like it just, it was in my DNA and very much in my childhood, that relationship between story and language and children. And that continued for me through high school and college, and then when I got to be in my late 20s, I decided, after trying several different other professions, that what I really wanted to do and what I was really kind of born to do was to write books, and I wanted that to be my professional life. And that's when I started. I actually started kind of late with the whole, author publishing thing, but I think I was preparing to do that from a very early age.
Did you find that any of your previous jobs or careers helped you in your chosen writing field?
Well, I actually graduated from college with an elementary teaching certificate. Okay. So the experiences that I had with that, I think, definitely were very, very meaningful. But I did learn that my forte with children is to work with them in small groups and in my own imagination. So that was an important lesson.
So were you in education for a while before you actually stepped aside and decided to do the writing?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Did you sort of take a big and then just do it, or was it more of a gradual process?
You mean just do the...
just decide to concentrate solely on writing?
It was gradual.
Gradual.
It was gradual. It was scary because, you just wonder if you have what it takes to do that, and I think that it took a while for me to feel like, yes, this is what I really need to be doing.
And need to instead of want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of brings me nicely to you, Amy. I know that you had a career in law, of all things.
I did.
Before you decided to take up the paintbrush again. Because you have a degree in fine arts, do you not?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And was that same question for you? Was that a jump, or was it? It
was very much a jump because I was a lawyer, and towards the end I had worked it out where I was working part-time, although part-time as a lawyer is still about 40 hours a week. Right. And I thought I'd be able to paint things on the side, but I just never had the energy or the time or the focus. And I realized that being a lawyer was great in many ways, but I kept feeling this is a great life, but for somebody else, not for me. And I was flunking the get up in the morning test, morning after morning. I'd wake up and I'd feel happy, and I'd think, I have to go to work. And it was killing me. And it wasn't because law was bad, it was because I have a need to do art. And I riffled around for a couple of years. I saved every penny I could, and I really questioned whether I should quit law, and then I quit, and I never looked back a day. And my income has dropped quite a bit, as you might imagine. This is not a career in which one tends to get wealthy, but I haven't regretted a day of it. It's just who I am.
Yeah, quality of life, so much more important.
Yeah.
And Amy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me. So if I understand right, you're saying that the first thing you really did was not necessarily write, but more drawing and illustrating.
One of my earliest memories is of being 3 years old in some kind of little nursery school and sticking a piece of paper, colored paper, onto another piece of colored paper and saying, I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. And I always loved to draw. It was always the thing I did. And I didn't think of myself as a writer. Although I was a good writer, and I'd been to great schools and got a great education, and so I was taught to write, but I never thought of myself as a writer. Although it's funny because the thing that I liked most about being a lawyer was writing these briefs, because you were basically writing a story. You know, it was always the same story, which is, you know, here are the facts, and this is why we should win. but you know, it took a lot of steps to get there, and you really wanted to convince people, and that was the part I liked best. It's kind of what I do now. Different stories, though.
Yes. And in previous discussions, we've talked about how the idea for Belinda just came to you.
It did.
Is that how things usually start for you, or does something spark a story? And the Mud Fairy, that was sort of a special beginning to a story.
Each story for me is completely different, how it comes to me. And that may not be true for other people, but for me it is. And as you say, the first Belinda book, I was still a lawyer at the time. I just had dinner with my husband, had a glass of wine. This story came to me, the whole thing, the pictures, the words, everything. I wish they all came to me, but they don't. Often something sparks them. So for the Mud Fairy, what sparked that was I knew a little girl who looked like just this little tiny delicate angel, and when you get to know her, she was this complete tomboy. She couldn't sit still for a minute. She'd go outside, splash in the mud, climb trees. You know, she'd outdo the boys on all these, you know, athletic endeavors. Real fire plug, it just made me think, well, what if there were a little fairy who was supposed to be all delicate like that, but really had more of that character? And I was also inspired by where I live. I live basically on a swamp in Spring Lake, and I love to see all the plants and the nature and wildlife, and so I wanted to set it right there. So most of the flowers and things that you see in that book are right from Michigan. So I kind of think of it as a Michigan book that way.
Yep, and I remember looking through that book, as the story progresses, the wildflowers change.
That's right. Not everyone notices that, but Amy will notice that. Yes, they do. So it sort of starts in early spring and goes through to summer. And if you go to my website, there are actually a couple of little match the flowers with their names and things that teachers can download or people can do.
Oh,
so
fun.
It's kind of fun.
Well, bringing up websites, I've noticed that you both have a website. And Margaret, you do a bit of blogging. Do you enjoy that, or do you feel that it's really a necessary evil?
I'm trying to do it in such a way that it's meaningful for me, and so I thought a lot about it. I started blogging with the publication of my novel, A Summer of Silk Moths, and I really thought about how can I do this blog, which is kind of necessary now, it's obligatory, but still have it be completely mine and meaningful for me, you know, when I have something to add to it. And I think that's a challenge of blogging, because there is something very impersonal and kind of mechanical even about blogging. So I try to do that, but I think I have to really put some effort into it and be very conscious of it. I don't want it to just be random information. I want it to be about things that are a little bit more intense and you know, and personal.
Thoughtful. With the personal, I know so many people say, oh, are you on Facebook? Oh, you know, what's updating? Let's update every second of our lives.
Yeah.
Tweets and Twitter. How much of the personal do you put in?
Well, usually I might put in something personal about the origins of the books,
character or a book.
the projects that I'm working on, the origins, where they come from in my life. I have uploaded, you know, some photographs. I just finished working on a short story collection. It's actually a novel in 12 stories that has a lot of, it's about growing up in a large family, which was my experience. So there's a lot of autobiographical stuff in these stories. And I did feel kind of inspired to post some pictures from childhood that showed, that kind of revealed my role in the family as the oldest sister. And also, you know, showed the span of my family, and so but I felt like that came directly out of not so much a need, you know, to have everybody see that, but that it's an important part of what led me to write those stories.
And that's up there now? I'm going to have to go check that out. It's been a while since I've looked.
We've kind of touched on it, but I'm just curious. Sometimes people say, or an author will say, well, I just had to write that book. It was in me and I just had to write it. Do either one of you have that experience with any of the Or is it something foreign to you? Is that just perhaps some people's response to writing?
I feel like with my longer fiction, there is a sense, of having that I have to write this. This is what I need to be working on now. With my picture books, I feel like those are more of an experiment sometimes, and I often start picture book manuscripts and don't finish them. They don't go anywhere, so I don't have enough urgency to actually finish a project, and that really rarely happens with the longer fiction that I write. I think that does come out of a deeper place for me.
Great. For you, do you have a similar thought?
It's not so much that I have to write a specific story, but I have to be creating somehow. And the words in the picture, people say, well, do you ever think of doing young adult, or do you think of doing some other genre? And I think I'm very happy in the picture book area because the pictures are so important.
They go together.
But so are the words, and it's just the process of bringing this thing forth that I have to do, not necessarily a specific thing. Although sometimes there are little ideas that kick around in my head for years, and I think that's going to be a story someday, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's in there, and one of these days it will come out, so that happens.
Do you, do you write those things down, or do you just trust the old?
I write them down in various notebooks. I say this will be the one notebook, but they're scattered in all kinds of places. I'll do little sketches, and then I'm going through my portfolio, and I'll think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm not terribly organized about it, but I think that's part of my process. I think I need to not be too organized about it. These things kind of grow in their own way. You nurture them as best you can, but
I'm curious about something which you were just kind of touching on. Sometimes when I'm at the bookstore, you'll come into the children's department and gather up some books and sit down, and I guess I'm always curious. I wonder what she's doing over there.
yeah, and I'm always worried that they're like, why did you buy a book already?
no,
I do buy them from time. I have a big collection of books.
I wasn't trying to touch on that at all.
A lot of times, well, I go for different reasons. Sometimes I'm thinking about stories, how other people construct stories. Sometimes I'm working on an illustration problem, and I'm just curious as to how other people have addressed illustrations. And I mean, it's kind of funny because I never come out thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do just what this guy did. It just doesn't work that way, not for me anyway. But sometimes seeing somebody else solve a problem beautifully helps me.
Inspires you, maybe?
Inspires me somehow. It pushes me along my own little
Sure.
path to solve the problem that I've set up for myself.
Okay, good.
Other than that, do you have any little tiebreakers or something that you will do? Like if you're stuck somewhere.
If I'm stuck, either on a story or an illustration, and I've really been pounding away at it, it's a sign that I need to do something else. I need to either work on another illustration, or if that's really not working, then maybe that medium's not working for this project. And same with a story. If it's not working, I need to just put it away for a while, do something else. Yeah, I think when you're first learning your craft, sometimes being stuck means you really have to stick with that and push through. But I think I've been doing this long enough that if I'm stuck for any significant length of time, it means I'm doing the wrong thing and I need to shift my focus. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think that I have a very similar experience with that. One of the things I tell students is that one of the nice things about writing professionally is that you can, when you're stuck, you can move to another project. You don't have to finish it and hand it in tomorrow. You can step back from it and turn to something else, and that's really necessary.
What do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time.
Is there such a thing?
Well, yes. I mean, I do. There are other things that I enjoy doing. I have a household that I love taking care of, and I enjoy cooking and reading, and I'm kind of a movie buff and have certain types of programs that I love to watch, and so there are lots of things in my day besides writing.
Yeah. I think sometimes we have an idea that a writer is only a writer, and what they do in their other part of their life, is way different.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're
No,
sharing.
it's pretty.
just
It's
like,
actually pretty normal. There are often stories spinning in the back of my mind.
That
you
I
know, if I'm chopping an onion, you know, or I'm in the car driving to the store. There might be something that's getting resolved that has to do with my work. But my days are, they're pretty normal and ordinary.
I just heard about some study that said that sometimes if you're having trouble with a problem, the way to find inspiration isn't by sitting working at the problem, but to take a nap.
Oh,
So happy to hear that.
Very good.
Yeah,
I like to take
I've got that
myself.
covered.
Yeah. They did say that you had to actually follow up with hard work and all of that.
but a nap was a good
But the
break.
nap was, yes.
Did they say anything about a post-nap chocolate cake?
I think that's a follow-up study they're doing.
I think we should do
I
that
think
study.
we should jump the gun. Yes.
Yes.
Sounds like a
Chocolate's
good idea.
always good.
Yeah, it is good.
And Amy, I've been in your workspace before, and it's just charming and colorful, and you've got a wonderful view of the swamp and the river. Margaret, what's your workspace like?
Ooh, it's not charming. Wonderful. I do have a wonderful view. It's in the lower level of my house, and it overlooks a ravine, and I really like that. I like being able to see trees and squirrels and birds and deer. That's important to me. But my office it's not as visually interesting, for obvious reasons. Although I suppose I could do something about that. But I do feel like because I work on many projects at once, it's always a little bit chaotic. Just a lot of stacks of papers and projects and notes and a few times a year I go through and just try to organize it. And that's really important so that it doesn't get out of control. But it's a pretty messy space,
It
actually.
seems that writers tend to like a small, somewhat sensory-deprived space, so you can think of your words, and artists need
opposed
more
to an artist,
space and
yeah.
visual
Color.
cues.
I
and
think
I've
that
seen that.
might be true, with exceptions, of course. But I think that might be certainly true for me.
It'd be interesting to see what would happen if we'd ask you to change places for a week. That you would go to Amy's.
Yeah, I would
Wreck
be,
her space.
I would be
She'd hate me.
distracted by all the
Right.
pretty images. I would feel like it was. I need my deprivation back.
And Margaret, I just finished your latest novel, young adult novel, which is coming out in October.
Right.
And you always use a lot of locations that are Grand Haven, or you change the name a little bit. And I always enjoy that. It's always kind of fun to pick out what you're saying. And I must say, you had a little surprise in there that I didn't know about. She used my father's last name for one of the characters.
Oh, did you?
I do feel like the names that are in my life that are people that are important to me, they find their way into my books, and I think that happens really sometimes unconsciously. So, and I think that that what you name your characters is important too. I think it's always has some significance. So yes.
Yeah, it was a nice little surprise.
Yeah.
It did make me tear up a little bit, and I showed my mom, and she, of course, teared up a little bit. But it was just a lovely little tribute, just to slip in there.
And the book is dedicated to a very dear friend of mine.
Jimmy Gordon,
who,
yes. Dear lady.
Yeah.
And what's the name of this book?
The name is Four Secrets, and it's actually set primarily in a juvenile detention center, which is which made it a very interesting project because I had to learn a lot about the juvenile detention center that's nearest to where we live, and I really learned a lot about what kids deal with.
Yeah.
I found it interesting to read. Both Amy and I were privileged enough to read it, and it was just really the whole concept of how we get to know the characters in the book and what was actually going on and what brought them there. I really liked the way you used the journal as a way to let us in on the characters.
Yeah.
It was really well done, I thought.
And I liked that one of the characters was an artist, and her
Yes.
journal was in the form of
That's
artwork.
right.
That's right.
Which brings me to a point I was thinking of. I hate to have surprises spoiled. Are you worried at all that somebody's going to flip through and see the pictures?
I did think about that,
Did you?
but the editor that I worked with, we talked about it, and he felt like it, you know, there was enough of an unfolding that those pictures would not have the same resonance, you know,
Until you got to that
until the
point.
reader knew what they represented. But yeah, I mean, it was the whole process of choosing when to reveal, you know, how much to reveal, when to keep a secret, and when to start to really begin to reveal some of the things that happened. That was a really interesting process for me, plot-wise.
I bet.
Because, you know, you're always you're trying to time that right, so that you're not creating your own spoilers.
And I must say, you paced the tension beautifully. It literally kept me up until 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's a good sign.
And I had to save the rest of it for my coffee the next morning. I said, no, that's my treat for the morning.
That's so nice.
But yeah, and as you mentioned, the multiple points of view, it was very interesting, and how somebody would reveal a little bit about another character, and then you'd sort of think, oh, okay, well, where's that going?
Yeah. It was really fun to write it that way.
Good.
Yeah.
When you are the more verbal part, obviously the author of the book, and perhaps your publisher or editor talks about how do we include illustrations, is that something you get totally involved in, or how does that work that they included illustrations?
Right. I think we decided, you know, very early on that there would have to be illustrations because one of the characters tells her story through pictures. So it was crucial, you know, that there be illustrations. And we talked about the illustrations beforehand, but I must say that when I first saw the illustrations that the editor had chosen to represent this girl's drawings, we had a lot of back and forth about it. They weren't what I had pictured in my mind, which often happens, you know, when you work with an illustrator.
Sure.
And I did put in my 2 cents worth, and I think the illustrations changed a little bit as a result of that. But mostly I had to kind of let go and be, and let somebody else have that vision.
But one thing I have to say about this that is relevant anyways, we often share the problems we're having with each other, and Margaret showed those illustrations to me, and I think it was Laurie Keller, you know, some other illustrators, and our response was, wow, these are really cool. I mean, I could see that maybe you think they should be pushed in one direction or another, but our first response was, you know, these are nice. They create a real atmosphere, and they've got nice angles, and this and that.
And that was really important for me because I was just seeing them as this isn't
Right.
You know, this isn't what was in my imagination. So as soon as Amy and Laurie, as soon as they said, oh, these are really good, that was so helpful for me to feel like, okay, you know, these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, two very
and I can
visual
let go
people.
of my own, you know, my own ideas for how these should look.
It reminded me a little bit of R. Crumb's work.
Yeah,
what's in the style.
they're very graphic. They're very graphic novel inspired, and that's very popular right now. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's cool that you have each other not only as contemporaries, as authors, but that you also get a chance to talk to each other.
It's the best.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you know, we both.
She's helped me so much with manuscripts and problems and.
Yeah, and then you know, Amy has that visual experience. It's really it's important.
Yeah, it is a community.
Yeah.
And there are some others too.
There is an amazingly rich community of artists and writers in the
It's
Grand Haven
surprising
and Muskegon
here in
area.
Western
It's
Michigan.
very
Yeah.
impressive.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Amy Young and Margaret Willey and Amy Wilson for joining us today, and we'll be right back.
I'm Amy Wilson of the Bookman in Grand Haven, and these are some of my favorite picks. One of the best things about working at the bookstore is that occasionally we get a big box of books from the publisher that has not been released yet. The books have not. One of the best books I have read and what I am going to be recommending is a book called The Secrets of Mary Bowser. Mary Bowser was a real person. She was born a slave, emancipated, moved to Pennsylvania and got an education which would not have disgraced a white girl in those days, and then made the choice to move back to Virginia and pretend to be a slave. The reason she did this was so that she could spy in Jefferson Davidson's White House. It's a very exciting book, and it sheds light on a horrific condition, but you will cheer for Mary Bowser, and you know the end of the war is coming, so that's a good thing. Another book I enjoyed very much, it was the third book in the Starvation Lake series by Brian Gruely. Starvation Lake is a fictional town in northern Michigan, not doing too well, falling on hard times. The main source of excitement and even income is the youth hockey league. He explored that in his first two books, and this third one is dealing more with his family, specifically his mother, who has dementia and is really should not be living on her own. And he discovers some secrets about her that tie into a town mystery, and that's all I'm going to say. Another book that is really beautifully written and is on our bestseller list right now is Carol Anshaw's Carry the One. You may have seen reviews in People Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, USA Today. It's a story of what happens after a split second's poor decision and terrible accident, and how it affects the people involved with the accident for the rest of their lives. Very well written, and I recommend you check it out.